This is
RedPubPod.
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 a podcast
Yes.
from Redhawk Publications.
That's hard.
It's hard. This is RedPubPod. My name is Jane St. Clair. I'm the editor here at Redhawk Publications, and I am with Richard Eller, who is our director and producer of Redhawk, and Patricia Thompson, who is our editor-in-chief. And today we welcome Howard Pearre, who has a debut short story collection that has just come out called Rocks Just Below the Surface. And these are stories that embody kind of a journey from childhood through adulthood, actually, and a really wonderful narrative journey from characters who are experiencing life through the military as well as childhood coming-of-age stories.
If you don't mind, I like
Yeah.
what you're saying, because to be honest with you, it is a journey through life.
Yes.
I mean, he's approaching not just childhood, but teenagers, young adults, older adults, and if I dare say, male-oriented. These are men's stories and boys' stories, which I think is really important today. But man, you paint a really wide paintbrush of different kinds of characters facing all different kinds of choices.
Yes, and I didn't plan it that way. These are just stories that came to me from different times and in different places, and it was not planned to be a book or a collection. It just was stories that I wanted to express about people that I knew or were inspired by the people I knew and the events. So
it was based on some people you knew, huh?
well, of course.
I was wondering if they were composites, you know.
There certainly are composites also.
Okay.
And it spans roughly 4 decades, from the 40s through the 80s. Is that correct?
Boy, I guess that's a fair thing to say, and that's just because the inspirations with the people and the events took place during that period of time. Again, not planned. It just was different stories that occurred.
That's wonderful. Yes, and I was really interested in, it felt like there's kind of the sense of rocks just below the surface. It seems like it spoke to a time where people were reading the water and also the wind and much more aware of nature and the sense of wildness around us and knowing how to navigate in that world for danger, correct? And I just was wondering whether this is something that, you know, your characters felt very similar from story to story in that respect. That there's this kind of underpinning of like possible danger or the chance of danger happening.
I guess so. The title, and as many writers find this to be true, titles are hard. And I think I wrote a list of probably 2 pages worth of titles, and it occurred to me that I should look through the book and just see if there was anything that would be evident from any passages in the book. And I did find the place in one particular story that involved a canoe ride, a boat ride down a river, and that was based on some personal experience. But the rocks just below the surface seem to be to encapsulate the different stories. The rocks analogous to the stories, of course, and what the danger of that you could experience with rocks in a fast current water.
And that's kind of interesting, because I took the title to mean that at a very superficial level, we all know one another generally and superficially, but underneath each of us, there's a layered complexity of who we are. And it gets back to those choices we were talking about, you know. Right below the surface, I may choose to do A or B. And depending on the choice, it could be a good outcome or maybe not so good. And many of your stories end with either something humorous or, ooh, boy, did I dodge a bullet. And in some cases, there's tragedies too.
Yes, mhm.
So those
Right.
choices
Sure.
become really important. And it's just below the surface, depending on, how we choose to act.
Sure. Mhm.
Yeah, in the moment. And it feels like, too, these characters live in a time where there's a code, like a code of dignity or kind of, in a sense of like, and maybe I'm wrong on this, but I just got the sense from the first story, especially with the father speaking to his son about how much do you use rat shot or do you use a heavier shot,
Yeah, right.
And that there's a sense of how to do these things. That if you're going to do it right, and kind of like leave it better than you found it. Kind of,
I think you're right on that assessment, although, again, none of that was planned.
Yeah,
As far
I
as the
love that.
storytelling, it just
Yeah.
was what the story is and how it occurred to me and what I remembered from different situations.
That's great.
So-
I love it that the story kind of does that.
Yeah.
It kind of tells us later what it's about.
I just wanted to also ask you, how long did it take you to write these stories? Because when we have short story authors, sometimes remember David Dixon, he said it took him 20 years. How long have you been writing these stories?
I think about 10 years, is an accumulation of stories.
Yeah.
And again, there was no expectation or really ambition toward any kind of a collection or publication in this format. It certainly has been a thrill to see that this has taken place.
Well, that leads to another question. If you've been writing short stories, let's say over 10 years, were there some that didn't make the collection?
Yeah.
Okay.
Well,
And how
there's-
how does one make a choice?
Well, what this collection is stories that would be classified as fiction. There is certainly inspiration of real events and real people, but there's too much creativity to call it creative nonfiction, for instance. So I've got a number of other stories in the computer that are closer to the truth and don't have so many fabrications in them.
In terms of the stories that you covered about military service and
Right.
wars,
Okay.
there was one place that I was really impressed with, the way that you talked about World War I. And I was wondering what you've worked with the Department of Veterans Affairs,
Right.
and how that might have informed some of these stories in terms of inspiration, but also maybe events and things like that that fed into them.
I don't think it was the VA, although the working at the VA was an amazing experience, an enriching experience. But I think my own military service and the service of my father and my uncles, all of my uncles were in uniform in World War II, and I even had an aunt that was in uniform.
That's great. Yeah.
So, and the stories that I understood from them and circumstances I think, influenced the book more so than, say, the VA work.
Oh, good.
You were
That's
a
wonderful.
paratrooper, right?
I'm sorry?
Were you a paratrooper?
I did go to jump school, and
Yeah?
I did jump out of airplanes.
Wow, okay. Perfectly bad thing to do for a wonderful aircraft, but that's okay.
Well, I tell people I am a man of faith because I was an Army paratrooper.
Right? Yeah.
I did notice the one where there was a short story that involves a flight that goes over, I guess, the DNZ in Korea. And so you had to learn quite a bit about the mechanics of a plane, but with your paratrooper background, you have some of that knowledge. But there's a lot of research that you went into. That was a very technical
Yeah.
discussion on dropping leaflets from the air,
Yeah.
which is inherently dangerous in itself. And then you've got MiGs that are following you. That was an adventurous story.
I was, I did do the leaflet drops.
You did do that?
Yeah, yes,
did.
yeah. That was what one thing that I did in the Army, And it was not over the DMZ, it was out into the ocean, and we would drop from a route in the ocean, and they would, the leaflets would, the wind currents would bring the leaflets across the DMZ. The Biggs part was the fabrication aspect.
So that was classic. I mean, I visualize very well as I see, as I read. So that, to me, it was a very fun story. So thank you for sharing. My heart was beating the entire time.
Wow.
So that was
Okay.
good. That was good. There is something classic about this book in terms of, it seems like it's a throwback to the Hardy Boys. And I mean this in a good way. We have lost some connection in our world right now, especially for men and young men. How they're being brought up, it's just different. I'm not labeling it as good or bad. It's just different. So it brings the question, do you think doing the right thing is any easier or harder today?
My goodness. No, I think it's no different now than it has always been. I study history and was a history major in college. And what I learned was that it's no more difficult now to be a person and be a good person than it always has been. There's always been challenges, and it's unnatural to consider that we are in times that are unprecedented, and in some ways, the times are always unprecedented and dangerous. But the country, the society has been in dangerous circumstances before.
In terms of your writing, now I know you had experience maybe as a young adult writing and even working with a newspaper.
Right.
Have you continued to write your entire life? When did you start to really delve into the craft of like perfecting your writing?
Good question. I had the ambition of being a journalist from high school and was fortunate to be able to be a copy boy with the Charlotte Observer and through a Boy Scout connection. And that led to being able to be a copy editor, and I was the editor of a college newspaper, which was both fortunate and unfortunate because it occurred when I was a freshman at Charlotte College, mainly because nobody else wanted the job. And there were consequences, and one of the consequences was 2 years later I was ineligible to return to college, and that led to the opportunity of being in the United States Army.
There you go.
So, but I was able to go to a journalism school with the Army, and that was some other opportunities there.
Okay. But it seems like you've always been kind of a hobbyist writer then.
Yes, and when I retired from VA, I think it was 2016, I was able to give it a lot more concentration and work. I listened to some YouTube instructions by Owen Butler. I don't know if you're familiar with him. He's a Pulitzer writer and also a professor at Florida State. And he did 10 or 15 YouTube sessions whereby he actually sat at a typewriter or a computer and wrote a short story from absolute scratch. And what you would watch, and it's still on YouTube, would be his every keystroke, and he would sometimes come back the next day and erase pages.
Wow, that's wild.
I mean, it was exactly watching him, and then he would stop doing that and have a commentary about his thought process. So anyway.
We gotta check.
Okay, we're going to be putting that in the description because I'm fascinated by this.
A link. Yes.
I studied that.
Wow.
And other things, the Winston-Salem Writers workshops.
Well, I do want to talk about the Winston-Salem Writers because we've periodically worked with authors who are engaged with writing communities, and we cannot impress upon how important it is to write with colleagues, to have a cohort, to have a community of writers. Tell us a little bit about the Winston-Salem Writers, because we're not as familiar, and we want to give a big shout out to them because they created you.
Well, my goodness, they've created a lot more than me. and they're really a fantastic group. Support writers in many ways. They have the system of critique groups, of which I was a part of several of those. And you learn so much from critique groups, and not only listening to your own work being critiqued, but the study that you have to do to critique others' works. The workshops have been very important, both informative and instructive about what various things to do. A recent series of workshops has been publishing independent work, self-publishing work. So that's been very interesting to tune into also.
Yeah, and I noticed that you're the one of the judges and editors for the Flying South contest and anthology. Can you tell us a little bit about that? Because you never know who might be interested in learning.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, this is a annual contest for short stories, poetry, and nonfiction, 3 categories, and there are money prizes. And I have been the fiction editor and fiction judge for a couple of years, and was a reader of fiction prior to that. And that's beneficial for me. That's another way to learn other people's styles and other people's ways of handling situations and stories. So you learn whatever you read, of course, you're learning. But the Flying South it's an annual publication, and hopefully will be out in September or in that time frame.
Great.
In the fall.
We'll make sure we also put that in the description because people might want to learn a little bit more about it.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And you also mentioned something about, Patty had mentioned about bookmarks and how much we love that bookstore in Winston-Salem. And you'd mentioned that you were part of an anthology that did readings at bookmarks.
Well, a while back, I had a piece that was accepted into the Flying South, and
Very cool.
that was the anthology that
good.
some of the local folks. The anthology, it takes has contributors from throughout the country, and so they seek out some local folks who can actually get to the bookstore to do a reading, and I participated in that once.
Too, I was just really fascinated by the byline story, and I can see now how much that comes from biography of your experience.
There's some close parallels, yes.
Right.
Yeah.
But would you like to speak to one thing that was fascinating to me was the idea of, back in that time, radio and newspapers were the portal for events. It's like you had to wait to hear from people who were kind of not gatekeepers, but really the voices, right? Of this is who won and this is what happened.
Oh, yeah.
And it's right.
Yeah.
So people, what really fascinated me was like the parallels between, do you mind if I read the last line of this? Okay, it's just, I love the first line, not the first, second paragraph. Since high school, all my heroes were journalists: Crane, Hemingway, Pyle, Mencken, Royko. Some achieved later success writing fiction, but it was their newspapering that sang to me. The invented pyramid, the 5 W's, investigating the high and the mighty, mixing with the rich and the famous, right? And then at the end, the way that you speak about, the character speaks about glamour. And I love that you chose that word, glamour, because there's deceit in that word, too. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I was just wondering if you could speak to how that correlates with media now, in terms of the power of having the byline, because he really wanted a byline. That was a goal,
important, yeah.
right? It was like, but also to be that voice and what it took to be that voice, like what kind of personal cost. Again, we're talking about codes of integrity and stuff like that. I just felt like that character was so interesting to me.
Well, the story about that was an ambition to write as a career. And I determined very quickly that to write novels or fiction took a lot of talent and a lot of work, some commodities I wasn't quite sure of. But I knew there was one profession, journalism, where a person would have a regular job and show up and get a paycheck on a regular basis and have a regular life. And I thought, well, that's very appealing. So that led me into the notion of journalism. The bylines, of course, is a credential. It certainly is something that makes you emotionally feel strong, if that is what you're trying to do. It's a way of having your name in the newspaper, for example. So that was some of the thought process that went into that.
Do you mind if you read something? Maybe there's a part of the book that you'd like to read, and it could be from whatever makes you happiest to read from.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
All right.
And while you get your story, I'm going to bring up the fact that this book is unique because your layout artist was also your nephew.
Well, that's right.
So we want to do a big shout out to Patrick Holt, who did an exceptional job on the layout of the book, Rocks Just Below the Surface, published by Redhawk, authored by Howard Pearre, and available at redhawkpublications.com. Got to get that in there.
Yes, definitely.
Make sure you get it. Okay, now Howard's ready.
Okay. I'll read a couple of sections from Okie Joe's Decision. And so I'll just start at the beginning. The patrol car flashed its blue lights and pulled alongside the concrete median. A short, commanding whoo-up of its siren made sure everyone paid attention. Traffic eased through the intersection. Drivers peered at the commotion. "Where's your ID, Joe?" Okie Joe shifted his cardboard sign, reached into a pocket of his army jacket, and pulled out a dirty laminated card. "My chain broke." "Well, if you're going to be out here, you've got to display it." "I got to get another chain," Joe said. "I guess so," said the officer. "Until then, you're going to have to hold it so it can be seen, or you'll have to get off the street." "Don't let me come by again and not see it." The officer handed Joe $1. "Too hot out here anyway, thanks." It had been one of those August days like when he had arrived in Okinawa 3 decades ago. Exiting the Pan Am 727 into the humidity after a 14-hour air-conditioned ride from Travis, he felt like he'd stepped into a sauna. It was 6 a.m., and he had 18 months to go. So that's the start of that little story, and there's a few pages on. The following morning, Joe woke up to find cooler weather, clouds and drizzle. The jacket would feel good, and the drizzle would help in another way. While rain made you look pathetic, and therefore was good for business, it also kept the car windows up. But with a light drizzle, drivers seemed more willing to lower their windows and open their wallets. He ate the rest of his crackers and made his way across the street. At that moment, Joe spotted the big man, not on the median as he was before, but standing on the side of the road next to the intersection. As before, he just stood, flying his sign and staring at drivers. Then Joe took in the rest of the scene. Several feet behind the man, a skinny woman and 2 young children, all with blank expressions, sat huddled on a dirty yellow blanket under a golf-style umbrella next to several bulging black plastic bags and a Playmate cooler. The woman wore blue jeans and a Mickey Mouse sweatshirt. One child, slightly older than a baby, Joe calculated, wore a dirty t-shirt, diapers, and no shoes. The other child also was shoeless and wore shorts and a pink jacket. Joe's feelings spun from being incensed at how the big man had appropriated his spot the previous day to pity, to disgust at how he was exploiting his children and wife and children, to admiring his cleverness for the same, and finally almost to respecting him, understanding that he was doing what he had to do to take care of his family. So that story actually was inspired on Stratford Road in Winston-Salem. As I drove by and saw a man standing there with a sign begging, and behind him were 2 children and a skinny woman on a blanket. So, and of course, brought in some information from my own experience in Okinawa and that sort of thing. So
It's really powerful. And I really am grateful to you for not glamorizing so much of the stories of war. You know, I mean, it's been done so much in Hollywood and in books as well, right? But this is just every story that I read. It's this, you know, it's this unvarnished view of like a country that, on the one hand, you know, we serve,
Right.
and then on the other hand, what do we do for our people when they come home?
well, I
know.
think the stories really are. There are several stories that take place during wartime, but they're not really war stories.
Right.
They're relationship stories.
Right. Yeah.
And angst stories and trying to determine what to do in different difficult situations. And there obviously is no glory in war.
Yeah, you do a really good job of very much what you said. It's not really about warriors. It's about the relationships, the people that they interact with, the crew, for example, from that particular story we were talking about earlier. You know, one of my favorite things to do when I read a book like this is to have a cup of coffee. Oh, time to get that plug in. We have a sponsor, Howard.
Okay.
And we have to always creatively figure out a way to
Very
segue our favorite sponsor, our only sponsor, which is Tasteful Beans, located in downtown Hickory. So, you know what? Feel free to stop by Tasteful Beans, meet with Scott Owens, the owner, if he's there. He is the poet laureate of the city of Hickory, and he's very graciously sells many of our books. So we couldn't be happier to have that relationship with Tasteful Beans, and we thank you. Go get yourself some coffee and wonderful food as well.
Well, my wife and I will be needing to have lunch after this session.
Oh, they have great food.
That's a very good suggestion.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Absolutely.
It's kind of like, you know, if I think of the bookmark
Yeah.
in Winston,
Right.
this would be the equivalent of that in
Okay.
terms of
Okay.
the spirit, you know, the soulfulness of it,
Yeah.
and delicious food, great reading, and gifts and coffee. They have it all over there. So, yeah.
You know, as we start to wrap this up, I do have one final question to ask you. What's next? Because you have those extra stories. So is it a novel in you next, or more short stories?
I think novels are not in my future. I don't have the concentration or the stamina, I think, for that genre. Maybe some work with some of the creative nonfiction. I'd like to see if I could put some of those stories together. It might be tapping on your shoulder about that sort of a adventure.
One thing I do want to point out, because again, we always try to educate our listeners. I give Howard props for probably being of what 130, 140 authors we've worked with. You self-edited amazingly well. We've had some authors who have a problem with self-editing. They don't know when to stop. But Howard, you are meticulous and a very craftful writer. So I want to thank you as someone who has to work with authors.
Well,
you were quite good.
There's a dedication early on in here to Kathy Pearre, my forever editor, who I'm meeting for lunch in a few minutes. But she is meticulous. And another point I made in the back of the book, I think, is she frequently said, "What is this story really about?" So she was excellent to keep me on track.
She was your first reader, would you say?
Yep.
Okay. First and probably best.
Right.
Well, Tim Peeler, one of our editors, he was my beta reader for your collection, and he very enthusiastically said, "This is a book that needs to be done." And he also said, "And it's well written." So we were very fortunate to have not just one of our editors say it's well written, but you came in as an editor. And so again, it was a joy to work with you, Howard.
Well, it was tremendous fun, and I'm very gratified and honored to be a participant.
We're so glad you could be here today
Thanks.
as well to do this podcast. And we have one request as kind of a closing ceremony is if you could say the name of our podcast.
Oh, well,
Not to put you on the spot.
make sure I know what that is. It's RedPubPod. RedPubPod.
Yes,
That's hard.
it's hard.
RedPubPod.
RedPubPod. Okay, and thank you so much for being here.
Well,
and
thanks.
Yes, really enjoyed speaking with you today, and look forward to promoting your book.
Okay.
Yes.
Very good.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Patty.
Bye.
This is
RedPubPod.
RedPubPod.
Yes,
That's hard.
it's hard.
a podcast
RedPubPod.
from Redhawk Publications.
RedPubPod.